what unexplored really means. There's a number people like to repeat about the ocean. They say over 90% of it remains unexplored. And like most people, I accepted that. I didn't question it. What I didn't realise was how literal that word really is. Because unexplored doesn't just mean unmapped, it means unobserved, it means places where no one has watched life exist. Even briefly, that realisation changed the question for me. I stopped wondering what might be down there and started wondering how anything could live there at all. Because the deeper I looked, the clearer it became that the deep ocean doesn't have the conditions we associate with life. No sunlight, no warmth, no stable food supply, and yet life exists there, which raises a different kind of question. If the deep sea doesn't support life the way we expect, what kind of life does it support instead? And how much of it have we never seen? Most people imagine the deep sea as the bottom, but the deep sea doesn't begin at the bottom. It begins where sunlight disappears. Not gradually, not symbolically, completely. By around 200 metres, sunlight is already fading. By 1,000 metres, it's gone. Below that depth, photosynthesis is impossible. No plants, no algae, no energy coming from the sun, and yet this isn't some narrow fringe of the ocean. It's where most of the ocean actually exists, which makes the problem impossible to ignore. If sunlight powers almost all life on Earth, how does life continue when it never arrives? Then there's pressure. Pressure increases faster than most people realise. Every 10 metres, the ocean adds another atmosphere of force. At 1,000 metres, the pressure is more than 100 times what we experience at the surface. Enough to crush steel. Enough to implode most human-made structures instantly. At that depth, your lungs wouldn't collapse slowly. They wouldn't have time. The space inside your body would simply stop being allowed to exist. And yet, entire ecosystems live permanently under that weight, not visiting it, not enduring it briefly, treating it as normal. Which is where things stop making sense. If our strongest materials fail here, why doesn't life? At this point, there's an obvious question. If the deep sea destroys most things that enter it, how do we know any of this at all? How has anyone actually seen what lives there? The answer is barely. We don't enter the deep sea the way we enter other environments. We visit it briefly, inside machines designed to resist pressure by refusing to bend at all. Deep sea submersibles don't survive by being strong everywhere. They survive by being strong in very specific places. Thick spherical hulls, tiny viewing ports, minimal openings. Because pressure doesn't crush evenly, it looks for weakness. And when it finds one, everything fails at once. So when humans descend into the deep, we do it slowly, carefully, knowing we're borrowing time. Most of what we know doesn't come from long stays, it comes from moments. Cameras lowered on cables, robotic arms reaching where people can't, lights turning darkness into something briefly visible. And then we leave, because the deep sea doesn't allow observation on our terms, it allows it on its own, which means almost everything we know about the deep sea comes from moments, not presence. Imagine life without light. In a place like that, vision stops being reliable, so life doesn't rely on it. Instead, many deep-sea organisms generate their own light. Bioluminescence. Not as decoration, as communication. Some use it to attract prey, others to confuse predators, some to find each other in a place where distance has no landmarks. What surprised me wasn't that light exists down there. It was how often it evolved independently, again and again, which suggests something important. Darkness wasn't a limitation that life barely survived. It was a condition that life actively solved. Light doesn't exist in the deep sea by accident. When it appears, it's controlled, measured, used sparingly, because producing light costs energy in a place where energy is rare. So when an animal chooses to glow, it's never for decoration. It's for a reason. Take, for instance, the anglerfish, which survives through stillness. Nowhere is survival in what you and I would call an impossible environment clearer than with the anglerfish. The anglerfish is often described as terrifying, but fear isn't what defines it. Efficiency is. Food in the deep sea is scarce. Sometimes days pass without anything edible drifting by, so instead of chasing prey, the anglerfish waits. It carries its own light, produced by bacteria living inside its body. That light isn't bright. It doesn't flood the darkness. It whispers. Just enough to attract attention in a place where attention is rare. We call it terrifying because we imagine encountering it ourselves. But the anglerfish isn't built for us. It's built for a world where nothing comes to you unless you give it a reason. And in that world, movement isn't always an advantage. Sometimes survival means doing almost nothing at all. Then there is the giant isopod. Its survival depends on feasting and fasting over time. Food doesn't arrive often in the deep sea, and when it doesn't promise to come again. That's where the giant isopod comes in. At first glance, it looks familiar, like a pill bug, something small, harmless, until you realise some grow over 2 feet long. Food arrives unpredictably down there, sometimes as drifting debris, sometimes as the remains of much larger animals. So when food appears, the giant isopod eats far more than it needs. Then it slows down. Its metabolism drops. Its movement becomes minimal. Some individuals have survived for years without another meal. Not weeks, years. Imagine eating today, not knowing if you'll eat again this year, not worrying about it, not rushing, just slowing your body down until hunger becomes background noise. In the deep sea, feasting and fasting aren't opposites. They're the same strategy, stretched across time. But in the deep sea, that's not the only strategy for survival. As the gulper eel demonstrates, by taking advantage of opportunity, sometimes food appears in ways you can't predict at all, and that's where the gulper eel comes in. Most animals have mouths sized for their diet. The gulper eel does not. Its jaw opens wide enough to swallow prey larger than its own body. Not because it expects large meals, but because it can't afford to miss rare opportunities. Its stomach stretches dramatically. Its tail remains thin and fragile. Speed isn't the goal. Opportunity is. When something appears, you take it, because you don't know when the next chance will come. Each creature has its own survival strategy. Look at the Dumbo octopus. Not sure why it is called Dumbo, as it shows intelligence through restraint. Not everything in the deep sea is built around consumption. Some creatures survive by restraint. The Dumbo octopus is one of them. Most octopuses are fast, reactive, constantly adjusting. The Dumbo octopus isn't. It lives deeper than most of its relatives, where sudden movement wastes energy. Instead of jet propulsion, it uses slow, wing-like fins. It doesn't chase. It drifts, feeding quietly on small organisms in the sediment. We associate intelligence with reaction speed, but in the deep sea, intelligence looks like knowing when not to move. And another deep sea creature, the sea cucumber, survives through recycling, and at the very bottom of everything, survival takes another form entirely. Avoidance. Sea cucumbers live on the ocean floor, where organic material slowly settles. Dead organisms. Waste. Particles drifting down from above. They don't hunt. They process. Moving slowly across the seabed, they ingest sediment, extract what little nutrition exists, and leave the rest behind. But their most unusual adaptation isn't how they feed, it's how they survive being noticed. Sea cucumbers can't outrun predators, they can't fight them off. And in the deep sea, escape is rarely an option. So instead of fleeing, some species do something unexpected. When threatened, they eject their internal organs, not as a last resort, as a strategy. The expelled tissue distracts the predator, sometimes irritating or poisoning it, buying the sea cucumber time to survive. In a world where speed doesn't matter, sacrificing tissue is cheaper than trying to escape. And once the danger has passed, the sea cucumber regenerates what it lost. Not because it's extraordinary, but because regrowing organs costs less energy than dying in a place where everything happens slowly. What looks extreme to us is simply efficient down there. The deep sea isn't unsettling because it's dangerous. It's unsettling because it works perfectly, without sunlight, without warmth, under constant pressure. It doesn't bend to human expectations, it doesn't scale to our senses, and it doesn't offer reassurance. At some point, the deep sea stopped feeling like a place. It started feeling like a boundary, a reminder that our understanding of Earth is built on a thin, illuminated layer at the surface. Below that layer, the rules change, and we don't get a say in how. Life doesn't evolve toward familiarity, it evolves toward persistence, even if that persistence creates worlds that feel completely alien to us. Here's what we've never been able to observe. Before we end, there's one more realization that doesn't quite sit still. Everything you've heard so far comes from moments, brief descents, short recordings, flickers of light in places where darkness dominates. We've seen the deep sea in fragments, which means we've never watched it behave over time. We haven't seen how life changes there from one season to the next, or how creatures interact when we aren't passing through, or what happens in places where our machines can't stay long enough to notice patterns. Most deep-sea expeditions don't last days, they last minutes, and then we leave. Which raises a quieter, more unsettling question. What exists in the deep sea that doesn't react to us at all? What kinds of life don't glow, don't move when disturbed, don't reveal themselves under artificial light? What adaptations would never show up in a short visit? At some point, the mystery stops being about what we've discovered and starts being about what we can't observe, because there are depths where cameras fail, where pressure deforms sensors, where light changes behavior instead of revealing it. Places we know are alive, but have never truly seen. And that's where the story continues. Thanks for watching, and as always, have a wonderful rest of your day.